Hey, you absolute legends. I want to tell you the story about how I traded some preamplifiers for a guitar, which I traded for a Les Paul and an SG, and which I traded that SG for this 1959 Gibson Melodymaker. I think it's a dream that all guitarists have to get their hands on a guitar from Kalamazoo, Michigan, between the years of 1958 and 1961, depending on what type of player you are and what type of guitar you're exactly looking for. Maybe 1956 if you're going older, and maybe further into the 60s if you're going later. But there's definitely a definitive year with 1959 and the infamous bursts. And while this is not a Les Paul, this is not a junior, nor a special, and definitely not a standard, this is still a single cutaway Gibson guitar made in Kalamazoo, Michigan, with that very infamous 1959 neck profile. And I have to say that I think all of the magic is there. When we got this guitar, it had a Lindy Fralin P90 in it, and while it was a very rocking guitar with that pickup and with that pickguard arrangement, we wanted to return this back to whole, and since it came with all the original bits, we felt like we should do that. Thankfully, we only needed to add one small additional bit of wire to extend the pickup wire, which had been broken. But besides that, this guitar is 100% original. Ink stamp serial number, original nut, original bridge. It is beautiful, and we are very, very excited to have it. So check this out while, we do a little time lapse of us putting this guitar back together and get it going. Okay, so we're gonna try and solder this back together as originally as possible. We do have to make a couple concessions because it seems that this wire from the pickup was ripped off of its solder point, and this ground wire has become loose. So we're gonna get this hardware out of here and then figure out what needs to go where. So I'm just trying to get this finger tight, get these things in their rough locations. And one side is way dingier than the other, so I'm gonna keep that up. We'll let it keep putting on wear instead of trying to take off whatever's left on the other side, chrome-wise, or nickel plating, whatever's going on here. But either way, we now have our components in their rough positions. Our pickup is still loose, but we're gonna grab this guy, we're gonna flip it back over, and we're gonna see exactly where our layout is. We got an interesting thing going on here, which is this wire that looks like it was bent over. And I have a feeling that this wire originally came through and connected right over here. And that is what this ground wire was actually soldered to. And you can see how that is all coming back together there. So I'm going to try and straighten back out this curve and get that tacked back on. But really, as long as it's connected to this pot, we should be good to go, which we should be able to do relatively easy. The harder solder point that we have to make is this one. Our pickup wire should be coming all the way down to here, and it no longer reaches that far. So we're gonna have to extend that a little bit, which we're gonna do with this wire here. So let's go and just take a little bit off there. And then on this side, you can see that we need to be to roughly about here. So we'll go and we'll take all the shrink from that space onwards. So we're gonna tack this on to our volume pot and then hopefully give ourselves a lot of space to connect our pickup wire, and then we'll trim it up from there. I actually may just take even more off. So let's get our iron hot and we'll start tinning some stuff up. So I'm going to tin my iron, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to fix this little separation in this wire that has occurred. And then I'm also going to solder this back into place. Let me grab something like this so Once I have this solder hot, I can just lift this up against the wire that it was originally connected to and make sure that we get it soldered not only to that wire, but also the pot, which is really where we want it soldered to and why they had this big glob in the first place. Just double checking our little splice here, and that looks nice and solid. And so the next thing I want to do is just double check my work as I'm going. I'm going to grab a continuity meter and just make sure that things are getting to where I would expect them to get. So that's exactly how I would expect that to go. We have our ground starting here at the jack. It's making its way down this lead. It's getting connected to this whole ground bus bar. It's showing up on all of the pots, which is where we'd expect it to be. So that ground is now reconnected and in circuit. The next thing that we got to figure out is the more harrowing of the experience, because we have to deal with our pickup. So I want to address this wire real fast. You know, this is a vintage Gibson. We're going to try and do a good job, even though this is not our area of expertise. Grab a little bit of heat shrink, just a small little bit, because we're going to make a small little solder. We're not trying to go crazy in here. And we will tin this wire. Don't put solder in your mouth, kids. It's a very, very bad practice. We're using solid core wire, which can be a little bit of a butthole to get tin on, and it heats up fast. So this thing's hot as hell now. If you do it right, it should make its connection very, very quickly. So we'll get enough solder to heat this guy up. We'll go in, and we should expect to see, if we touch the end of this wire, that it's showing up on the lug of this pot. And it does, because we're good at our jobs. So the next thing, and this is the one I always forget about, but we're gonna put this piece of heat shrink on our wire and just pull it on back. And we wanna make sure that our heat shrink tubing is doing a good job, so that when this lays down flat, it's not gonna touch, nothing is gonna make a connection. And then we're gonna take our pickup wire. We only have a very little amount of space. I don't want to wrap this around, because if I ever want to be able to pull it out again, I'd like to be able to do that. So I'm just gonna make a little loop. It's a half loop, doesn't wrap all the way around. And I'm gonna grab some solder. So I've made a little loop here for that pickup wire to sit in. Is good and connected. Ooh, spicy over on that end, which it is. And we can also check this with our multimeter. So now this pickup here, that connector should be showing up here. And it is. So the next thing we gotta do is grab some wire snips, and we're gonna cut that off. So I'm gonna go and snip this, and then get these guys to lay down as flat as possible. I'm gonna go cover this up with a little piece of heat shrink tube. I'm gonna try and isolate this other pickup wire so that we're just focusing on heat shrinking this one bit. We are heat shrunk, and now we're in a fine position to get the back of this pickup installed. The only other thing that we should have to solder on here is another ground wire. So let's get this in place and see how it goes. The problem with a lot of this shit is the plastic shrunk. Okay, so we have the original pickup back into place. It's probably too high right now. But we got to get the guitar, get ready to put this thing actually back in the guitar. So let's make that happen. We're gonna loosen up the strings. Okay, so now we gotta get a flathead screwdriver. I'm just using my fingernail to apply slight upward pressure to get that screw to back out, but not pull out the wood. That's out. Not able to get underneath that. See if I can get around the screw head with my fingernail. Okay, so that's now out of the guitar and out of the wood. So now the only other one we have to worry about is this one here. And we will disconnect our ground wire here, and we are on our way. So the easiest way that I know how to do this is grab something hard. This is the original ground wire, which went to the spot where they broke it before. So I'm gonna want to connect that to right there, where it was originally connected. And now that the guitar is back together, we're gonna have Jack play the guitar. And the video that we did really goes to demonstrate exactly what this guitar can sound like, because one of its greatest advantages is its tone pot. If you roll the tone pot back a little bit, this guitar can go from sounding like a Stratocaster to almost like a very P90 sounding jazz guitar. It is very, very, very versatile. And it is just a joy to play. The neck feels amazing, and the whole guitar weighs probably right around 5 pounds. It almost feels like holding a hockey stick. Please be sure to like and to subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're going to be giving away tons of stuff, including a Biodynamic M81, which we will be giving away when we get one more follower. So thank you so much.